the layers are always going to be different, but do you see, because I see this at least in our practice and speaking with our doctors, that there are patterns to it. Everyone's individual, whether it's your emotional trauma you have to, really look at, energetic, nutritional deficiencies, pathogens. There's so many things that may be your root causes that you need to address. But have you seen in working with people and even looking at your own journey that there are patterns that, yes, we need to reduce our toxic burden on our body. We need to address the emotional triggers and things like that. And we need to nourish the body with certain, good food. What are your patterns?
Yeah, exactly. Like fundamentals across all of humanity, right? It's like the way someone treats themselves, right? How they think, how they choose to think over a particular situation, which is their own free will. No matter how sick you are, you have control over how you choose to think about a situation, right? I know people who are like, will literally not go outside because of the chemtrails. Well, that's a dead end. Yes, maybe there are chemtrails, maybe there's all of this stuff fucking our life up, but the way you choose to respond to it is your free will. And when you go into a little dark hole, that's your own prerogative, right? That's in my opinion, a bad choice, right? So these are the fundamentals, the way you choose to think about your symptoms, even if you have symptoms, right? And then there's self-honesty. A lot of people are not honest with themselves and authentic and true to themselves. They're in terrible relationships and blaming everything on the mold, right? Like they have mold issues, but their husband's abusing them. They have no freedom, no sense of self-worth. They have no sense of self-love. Okay, but you're just going to focus on the mold? That's absurd, right? Yeah. And I would say the other basic principles is the toxin avalanche with the products and everyone should get rid of that. Everyone should drink clean water. Everyone should eat clean food, right? Everyone should choose nature and sun and grounding whenever they can. These are fundamentals that I don't care who you are, what level you're at, what your issue is. These are just basics of being a human being if you want a happy life and a long life. And then it goes much deeper into, different organs and different symptoms. But honestly, most people can heal from the fundamentals.
and the fundamentals to me, they're axiomatic. They're almost self-evident. Like everything you just said, I wouldn't be like, well, I have a counterpoint that I don't believe we should be in sun. It's like, no, that just makes sense to me. Then why are so many people freaking unhealthy? It's like everything that I tell people like you, I'm like, all right, get out in the sun more, breathe, like don't take in toxic things. People just nod their head. They're like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then they don't do it, right? And then they live their rat race, eat like shit, complain all the time, negative attitudes. Like you say, stay in bad relationships and blame the one thing outside of that they don't have control over, as they say. And we have 60, 70% that are now chronically ill. Children are getting sicker and sicker. And yet we have the knowledge. Why aren't we applying it?
I think there's two things there. The first thing is, I think even with the knowledge, I think that the toxins are so, what's the word? Sneaky. So if you look at, you can buy a non-toxic product and it still is loaded. You can just go to the airport and go buy you can buy something that seems like it would be clean or clean enough and it's loaded with I think that it takes a certain amount of daily sort of will and understanding of this world to really, really protect yourself. And I think a lot of people, unless they're in pain, they're just too lazy for that. You know, like I'll give you an example. Okay. I rarely do this, but I'm drinking a tea bag right now. Right. And it's a plastic tea bag. Right. And I still choose to do it sometimes if it's all I have, but things like that, it takes a lot of work to be able to really remove all of the toxins. But also, let's say someone is just making bad decisions. I think that there's just so much negative momentum in most people's life that they don't know how to get into that state where they're taking care. There's so much short-term dopamine in this life right now. And they can't actually get to the point where they realize that they will be more happy with the harder decision. Like if they don't eat, and I think people are just fractured and fried, and they're
Yeah.
just lost in panic and anxiety every day and survival, and they just can't get to that over the hump where they're able to calmly make grounded decisions that are going to benefit their future. People are so stuck in the immediate, like 5 minute dopamine, right?
Yep.
Like their world is just the next dopamine. And but
It's
I don't have an exact answer. I know what it's like to suffer and to not be able to choose the light, and I have compassion, and I know what it's like to be able to make every single choice be one choice for my future. It is such a happier life when you choose the
right.
future, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Like I love hearing these answers. I love getting like, guests to speak about because I do think obviously it's a big issue for most of society and so many people we love are dealing with it. We know people suffering. So we want to be able to address it, but at the same time, it is sort of like, there's at least to me, there's this lack of putting health first.
Mhm.
There's this sort of, you can always have an excuse for something, and it is hard work. And I always say healing is an uphill battle, but it's transformative. You will go through an
Yes.
alchemical transmutation and come out the other side changed for the better. And
Yes.
therefore, it may be a blessing because it's getting you into a higher evolved state and
Yes.
leading you to maybe a truer kind of path of what you need to
Yes.
be on. But to do that and only want a pill to get there is not realistic. It's the person that wants
Yes.
to be a millionaire overnight without doing any work. It's like, then it wouldn't even be worth it. You wouldn't even
Yes.
really enjoy it. And I think that's where people need to get into that long-term approach. And I know everyone wants to be an overnight billionaire now because $1 million isn't cool anymore. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of, we have these set things, and yes, they're dopamine, triggers, and we want it. But it's still like, if we could break it down, the fundamentals, it is completely worth it to put in that work, to put in a little bit of sacrifice to get so far ahead of the game and find yourself in a minority of people now that are healthy and happy.